Hello, hi everyone, it's me Kathleen, and today we will do a snowy scene. So we are now starting our winter slash Christmas slash holidays painting tutorials. So stay tuned for our lives, and we'll be covering various events. And Christmas is the best time because, well, there's so much you can paint, all sorts of things, from landscapes to mistletoes to Christmas trees, so many different ideas. But today we'll start with a snowy scene because watercolor can be tricky when it comes to painting white, or not painting white rather. Okay, so we'll start with just a few techniques that are good to practice before using it on your final work. So it's always good to have several exercises and, get comfortable with the different techniques. They're quite easy, so don't worry. Okay, so before we paint the actual scene that I shared, I have an extra paper here where I will be showing you different techniques that you might want to use. Okay, let me just flip the camera down now. There you go. Okay, so this is just extra paper. Again, this is not the main yet. So we'll just practice some techniques right here. So one technique that's really fun, you don't have to use this all the time, but let's say you have a tree and you want some snow on the body, on the trunk, but you don't want it to be like a chunk, right? Because it's vertical and the snow won't be a lot on just into the ridges of the tree. So you can use, you can cut, I couldn't find my small, but you can cut a smaller size of this wax. So you can just use candle wax, and then just wherever you want there to be some snowy, just try to be accurate, of course. Okay, so let's say you have that, and if you look at it from the side, you'll see it. Okay, and then now let's add some color to this so that you can appreciate this technique. Okay, let's use the brown. Okay, so let's say we have this brown right here. And just like that, you have this effect that's really very neat. Okay, so you have, it's like snow fell on the tree, but of course doesn't stay wedged like a lot up a pile of snow. It's just on the areas that you have ridges, and you immediately have a tree with some snow in it. Very easy. So this is very nice because it's just like a gentle touch of snow, so it's not piles of snow on the tree. So this is one really awesome technique that you might want to use or not, up to you. Another one is the dry brush. Okay, so this will really come in handy. Okay, so let me just, you want it, okay, let's start wet. Okay, so you want it to, this is wet, so you try to remove as much paint as you can. You want it to be dry, and using the flat side of the brush. Okay, this is still a bit wet actually. You can go drier. to create texture on the snow. So if you want like a soft shadowing or a textured shadowing on the snow, then you can do this. But this would look better with blue. Okay, so let's go with our blue right here. Okay, so that's wet. Now you want it to be dry, so you dry brush. So when you dry brush, you use the flat side, you don't use the tip. And now you get some texture on your snow. Okay, so that's another technique. Closer, it looks like this, as you can see. All right, so those are the two most usual techniques that I encounter when doing with painting snow. You can also use a, what do you call this? A masking fluid if you want to preserve intense whites, for example. I don't really use masking fluid a lot. Sometimes I'm afraid because sometimes the paper gets torn. But if you have a new one, try to test it out first, especially if it's old. Try to test it out, and if it's still okay, then go ahead and use it. You can mask the areas that you want to remain very white. Okay, so that's it. Let's see, we can now start your painting. So I shared the reference photo. So the sketch that I did is actually a little bit zoomed in, so it's not exact to the photo. So you don't have to follow the photo exactly. Again, just use it as a guide, and it can be totally different. The trees don't have to be exactly the same. Don't stress over it. Okay, so let's start. You want to have several different brushes. I also like to have a flat brush because when I do the sky. Okay, so the sky is quite easy. It's just one big blue sky. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to prepare my blue for the sky. So I actually lost the guide for this. So let me just... Okay. Okay, so we are going to use our blue right here, phthalo blue. The sky and the reference is quite blue, so the reflection on the snow will also have a lot of blue. Sometimes it's more grayish, but in a reference photo we have a very blue sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to wet the entire sky section. We're going to do a wet and wet. So when it's big swatches of sky, I usually do wet and wet so that I have a soft flow of color. So this is where masking in your trees come in handy, because you don't have to paint around your sketch. You can just go over it. I can't mask because it requires time to dry, and again it requires the wet parts to be very dry before I can remove it. So it's hard to do that for the lives. Okay, so I'm trying to make it wet. And now let's grab some of that phthalo blue. You can also use cerulean if that's what you prefer. So you can tone down the sky a bit if you want. It doesn't have to be this very, very blue. So a flat brush would be best for this. I'm using the cat's tongue now because it has a wide area and it's also quite flat. And I do like the tip for when I need to get into the trees. Makes it quite easy. And you don't have to be straight edged when you go and meet the trees. You actually want jagged edges. Okay, so this is the nice thing about doing landscapes. You can be quite loose and you don't have to follow your reference to the letter. And there you go. So you have a nice flow of deep blue going down. As long as everything is still wet, you can still move it around. Okay, so that's how it looks. The white that you see, that's the glare of the light. Okay, so this will dry later, and I think I'm okay with that, how it's going to dry later. I don't want it to be as intense as the reference, but I do like the nice blue sky. Okay, so now we'll leave this to dry and we'll work on the snow down here. Okay, so for here, you see the reflection of the snow, of the sky on the snow. So snow won't be white. It's not just going to be white, of course. It's because it's white, it's especially reflective. It can easily get reflected on by other colors. So here you will definitely have the reflection of your skies. If your sky is on the grayish side, your shadows would also be bluish gray. Here it's more bluish, the tinge of purplish. Okay, so let's, I'm going to use now a chunky round brush. Okay, and you can just again prepare your colors. So I'm going to use the same color. I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine to it, just to tone it down a bit. It's not going to be as blue as the sky. Okay, and then I'm going to start. I've softly sketched. I didn't sketch all the details. Again, you don't have to follow your reference exactly. Okay, so this is the blue. And I'm using rough paper because I want the texture of what I'm going to do to be more visible. Okay, so keep in mind that phthalo blue is quite staining, so you won't be able to easily lift it if you want to. So just keep that in mind when you're using it. You'll still be able to lift it, but not as friendly as the other colors. So do test your colors out so you won't get weird surprises. Okay, so as you can see, it's quite blue. And that's fine. You have your white here, you have your white here, you have bits of white here. So it's a balance between how much white you need to leave. And here too. So if you're scared of going too dark, start light, and then you can always add another layer on top if it is indeed too light. So you don't have to go dark right away, especially if you're not used to doing negative painting, leaving the white. Okay, so these are banks of snow. And even if it's just one color right now, by playing around with the values, you get contrast and volume. So above is just phthalo blue, and below is phthalo with a mix of ultramarine. So here it has dried. Another thing that I like to do is, if I find that the edges are too hard, you get your tissue paper or whichever absorbent material you use. I just brush over the edges, and then I sort of rub off the paint a bit. Okay, so you can soften it this way. So don't worry if things come out a bit too harsh or hard-edged, it's still salvageable. Just like that, you've softened the edge. Okay, let's continue. So here we have a bit of a darker area, so I'm just going to drop the paint in. It's still a bit wet, so it's going to spread a bit. So this scene that I chose is quite textured. I like my textured subjects. So if you want a softer snow scene, it's going to be the same techniques, just less texture, I guess, on this landscape. So if you haven't yet explored rough paper, it's good for subjects like this. So I don't often use it, but this is one of the times that I do like to use it. Okay. And then we go here. So the trees are creating a shadow right here. And this is where you can do the dry brush and just use the tip. I mean the upper half. But you're still going to do like at an angle. Okay. Let me add more ultramarine. It's a bit bright. Okay, and then we go up. So you'll see everything come together once you've covered everything. Okay, so now we have a lighter area. And here, so there's a flow to the snow. Okay, so you want to keep that. You want to have the gentle slopes that you see. It creates movement as well to your work. So just enjoy the process, and you don't have to hurry with this because it's part by part, so you don't have to make sure that everything is still wet. Okay, and now I can add a bit more purple. So you can add a little bit of red to your mixture. You can use alizarin crimson, or if you have purple, then you can just use purple directly. So I do have purple, so I'm going to add it to my mixture. Just to give this an extra effect. It's not so flat. Okay, so it's not everywhere. So now I'm doing the dry brush with this purplish mixture. In the reference, you can see that you do see some texture of the snow. So that's why I'm layering this purplish color on top as dry brush texture. Okay, try not to cover all the whites. Okay, you really want white popping through. And don't stress if you do feel like you've overdone things. The trick is you can always use gouache to bring back some of the white. Okay, so there's my snow down here. I can still deepen some areas, but for now that's okay with me. And I will leave it to the dry brush to dry first before I continue. Okay, let me just, my computer is so noisy. Okay. All right. Let's get back to this. Okay, so now we have the trees. So for this, we also need to mix a color. So I will use jade green. Okay, so you want a deep green. So I have jade green from the Vista, so I will use that. And then start adding the details of the tree. So you will just want to use the end, the tip of your brush. So you try to, okay, so it's a bit too green, so I'm going to add some yellow ochre to it, just to tone it down a bit. Okay, so now this is where you want to be careful. You don't want to cover everything with green because you want to leave the white. And you want to follow the shape of the tree. So I'm starting on this side because this white is more laden with snow, and this white, this side has more green popping through. So this will take time. So if you're not in a hurry like me, take your time and you can do it tree by tree, section by section. So some areas have bigger shadowed areas, especially where their trees are clumped together. So also put in those sections for some good contrast. You actually want there to be shadowed areas. So like here, for example, this tree is quite visible, the edges of it, because of the shadows. Okay, a lot of dots, a lot of, okay, so far this is how it looks. So you will have to layer and you will have to be patient. Okay, so let's not forget this tree. So I'm going to tone down my green and just have it pale to create the shadows here. Okay, so this tree is not as dark as the other trees. So you also want to have that. It means the trees on this side are at the back and covered by the other trees. That's why they are in shadow. So you actually want your brush strokes to be more textured, more there's more movement going on. That's how you can get the snowy effect. Okay, and then we can deepen some areas. So we've started with the lighter color, and now we can add the deeper sections, especially here at the bottom. Okay, and we'll do the same technique here. So some green, just the same green, just add more water. So just look at your reference photo. And for the bottom section again, there's more shadow. And try to have these rough brush strokes because you want to suggest the natural texture of the tree. Okay, let's go back to some of the blue. And deepen the shadows around the trees. Okay, and now let's move on to this section. Same technique as we did here. Same green, more water. Okay, so I'm just adding shadow. And I'm softening this section with a light layer of green. But not all over. Still want pops of white here and there. Okay, so it's like sunlight is popping through some holes from the tree, so that makes it more natural. So don't be afraid to leave random whites here and there. Okay, so now everything is starting to come together slowly. So you already see the trees much more better now. Earlier it was just looking like a bunch of mess. So remember, it's all about progress. So slowly progress towards what you're aiming for. So don't be impatient, because with watercolor you really need to be prepared to layer to achieve the effect that you're going for. So here I'm darkening some areas. So just layer, and this way you have much control over your work instead of going too dark right away and having trouble fixing things. Okay, so now I'm just going to add the shadows where they are. So this side has a bit of shadow because it's facing away from the light. The light is from here. Okay, I'm liking it. It's not exactly the same as the reference photo, and I prefer it that way. So now I'm going to add a lighter wash of green here and there. To further suggest that this side is facing away, but still leaving white popping through here and there. Okay, so now I need to add the visible mountains at the back. So I'm going to use jade green with yellow ochre. More yellow ochre. Okay. And then I'm just going to wait for that to dry to add several different layers. So now I'm going to go back to the snow down here and add the deeper sections. If you want, you can add more gray to your color. So this is to add more contrast. So the more contrast you have, the better your work will look immediately. So sometimes when you think your work is looking too flat, you might be staying too much in the center value zone. So try to up your contrast. Okay, so added the green here at the top without covering the white. So you need that white to suggest the top of the snow. And I also want to add some blue to the trees. Okay, a touch of blue will again bring everything together. Especially here in the parts where there's white of the snow. And it will also help your tree have more dimension. So that extra color really helps. So sometimes you might just be missing a color that you can layer over your work, over sections that you're not fully satisfied with. And use the dry brush technique so that you don't always go overboard. Okay, now let's go and add the darker sections here. So this is a mountain range, so you want to show several layers. And the further it goes away, the further it moves away from you, the more hazy it will be. So just slowly lighten your colors as they move away. Not everything should be clearly visible. Okay. It's a bit darker, so I put just a smidge of brown. Okay, and you can stop at this, and you can, you know, just relax already, or you can add a few more layers if you're not satisfied. So again, that's up to you. Here, I think I will just deepen this section as well. So for extra contrast. Okay, and there's my snow. I hope you found it easy to do. It's just work by section. Here I think I can soften this a little bit. So like what I did earlier, I just wet it and then I just scrub it a bit just to soften. Okay, so you can do the same. Alright, so this is my finished work, or what I can finish during this time. I like it. It's not too white, but it's clearly a snowy scene. So snow doesn't have to be just a white blank space, okay? A lot of the time it will definitely reflect the colors around it. So the sky will be reflected on the snow. If it's a nice blue sky, the snow will also be quite bright blue. If it's a grayish sky, this will be bluish gray as well. So just observe the colors, try it out, swatch it out, have your extra paper and just try to mix the different colors that you see so that you can test it out before you use it on your work. Alright, so let me now pop back to my face. So this is the finished work. Okay, so I shared the original and you'll find it there. I think if I'm going to add, it will be more just to take care of the shadows, especially around this part. I think I will add more and a little bit here and here maybe. But with this, I'm already quite happy. And you can tone down the green if you don't want it to be this green. You can make it more evergreen. It's up to you. My style is really more on the warmish, more cheerful style. So even if I do winter, I still prefer to have a more color. But you can definitely try to have a more grayish tone to everything. That can be quite fun too. Okay, so I hope you give this a go. And if you do, please do share your work with everyone so that we can appreciate it, because snow can be quite hard. And if you did it, you must be proud and share it. Okay, so thank you for joining me as always, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.